love that. Praise the Lord, my soul. Hopefully our hearts are filled with thanksgiving. No matter what happens in life, we're here to honor and celebrate and worship God. And that calls for this response. St. Ignatius of Loyola once said, all is gift, all is grace. St. Paul says that everything is a gift from God and we should be thankful. And the question for all of us, I think, is do I see everything as gift, or do I see this is mine and that's yours? You see the difference, the way we approach things. So today the three things are trust, thanksgiving, and sacrifice. And we're going to talk about widows and stewardship within that. So the first one is trust. If we go to the first reading from the first book of Kings, we hear this walk of trust. So Elijah is living during a drought in Israel. And so God says, I want you to go east of the Jordan River. There's a stream there, and the ravens will bring you meat and bread day and night. Sounds crazy, right? But in his faith, he trusts God. He goes east of the Jordan. He's able to drink from the stream, and ravens literally bring him bread and meat. The stream dries up, and God says, now I want you to go to Zarephath, which is this foreign country where people speak a different language. They're not Jewish, and I want you to trust me. And so Elijah goes as he's directed, and who does he meet but this widow? Now, widows were people who, because they weren't able to maybe make a good living, were kind of set aside by society, and they were just trying to make ends meet. And so this widow was no different. She had a son, and we know that she was down to a little bit of flour and a little bit of oil. And so Elijah asked her, he says, please bring me a cup of water. Now this should make us think forward to Jesus, right? Do you remember when Jesus goes to the well and he meets the Samaritan woman and he says, give me something to drink? He's trying to ask for her faith. And so Elijah similarly is asking for this woman's faith and trust. And he says, oh, by the way, when you're on your way, can you bring me some bread? It sounds cruel, right? Because he probably knows she's down to nothing. But he says, if you trust God in this, God will take care of you. Well, your flour will never end and your oil will never run dry. And so in trust, the widow brings him some water and bread, and she thinks, okay, now my son and I are going to die. But God doesn't allow that, and they're able to eat throughout the drought and beyond. And so this is such a great image for us to think about, wow, how much do I trust God's provision for me? The second one is thanksgiving. I don't know if you've ever been in a drive-through window where somebody ahead of you pays for your meal ahead of time. It happened to me once, and it was just, $7 or $8, but I thought, wow, that is so generous and thoughtful. And you've probably heard of that one, it might have been a McDonald's, where there were over 150 people in a row. They just kept paying for the next person. And so it's not about the size of the gift, but it's about the heart that gives it. And so we have in the gospel today the story of Jesus and a widow. And so Jesus and his disciples are outside the temple, and they're watching. And if you can imagine the temple, there are many different boxes that people could put their money into. One might be to buy a dove for a sacrifice. One was for the general upkeep of the temple, and there were others. And it says here, many rich people put in large sums, and then a poor widow also came and put in 2 small coins worth a few cents. Now, they say that these were copper coins, probably worth about 2 or 3 cents in our money. And Jesus took this opportunity to teach his disciples a lesson. What does he say? This poor widow put in more than all the other contributors to the treasury, for they have all contributed from their surplus wealth, but she from her poverty has contributed all she had, her whole livelihood. You talk about trust, and also, I'm sure it came from the spirit of thanksgiving that all that I have is God's, and I'm going to return it to him. So you're going to hear us talking in a couple months about these 6 characteristics of a disciple. What are characteristics of a disciple? They grow in their faith, They give, they serve, they worship, they build community, and they live for Christ. They live virtuous lives. So today we're going to focus on that giving, but also this living for Christ, a life modeled after Christ. And so, do we trust God? Are we thankful for the gifts that He's given us? If so, it calls for a response. So stewardship is not just about money, but it's really a spiritual approach to life, that all that I am, all that I have is a gift, and I freely share it. There's one diocese that I love how they do it. They call it the 5-4-1 plan. So they encourage people to give 5% to their church, 4% to other charities, and 1% to the diocese. And it really makes you think, am I intentional about my giving? You know, and I remember before I became a disciple, when I'd go to church, I'd pull out the 23 cents in my pocket and I'd throw it in there. And I thought, wow, I'm being really generous. And I realized it wasn't at all. And the more I've grown in faith, the more what I do now is I have another bank account with my others, and whatever money comes in, I put 10% into my tithing account, and from there I give to the parish, I give to other charities, and to the diocese. And again, it's not just about money, but it's about this way of living. So for example, today at St. Isaac's, you have opportunities. St. Vincent de Paul truck is out there after all the masses. If you have clothes that you probably haven't worn in years like I do, here's don't just throw out your junk, but maybe clothes that you know you're probably not going to wear, somebody else can use them. In the narthex after Mass, you can sign up to adopt a family. They tell me there's only a few families left, so it's going to be first come, first serve after Mass. But this is a way to serve people who are, have more needs than we do. In a couple weeks, we'll have the Little Sisters of the Poor with the turkey drive. We sent about 500 coats down to Gallup, New Mexico for the poor there. Maybe there's children here in our diocese, and my dream is that, as we are more and more generous, and this is a generous parish, we not only take care of our needs here at St. Isaac's, but it overflows to where we can help so many more people in our community and beyond. Finally, we have trust, thanksgiving, and now we have sacrificial giving. There's a third widow that isn't in the readings today, but as I was praying with this, we have the widow of Zarephath, we have the widow in the gospel, but who is a third widow that shows what sacrificial giving is all about? It's the Blessed Mother. If you think about that, we believe that Joseph died before the Passion of the Cross, and God asked her to do something amazing to carry the Son of God. But imagine, those of you who are mothers, imagine what it was like following her son to Calvary. Jesus meets her on the way to the cross, and you can imagine the anguish of her heart as she's watching her only son on his way to be sacrificed. Similar, if you think back to the Old Testament of Abraham and Isaac. Abraham is our father in faith. He's been waiting for a son. God gives him this miracle son of Isaac, and he says, okay, now I want you to go sacrifice Isaac on the mountain. And Abraham goes, he trusts, he's thankful for this gift, but he's willing to give God everything. And just as he's about to sacrifice Isaac, God says, stop, I see your faith. Well, if you think of the Blessed Mother, God doesn't stop. He allows Jesus to be sacrificed. But we hear in the second reading from the letter of Hebrews, but now once for all he has appeared at the end of the ages to take away sin by his sacrifice. And of course we know, and something inside the Blessed Mother knew, that this isn't the end. We know that he rose from the dead to give us all an opportunity to live with him forever. So in the spirit of trust and thanksgiving and sacrificial giving, do we believe that everything is a gift from God? He invites us to be generous with all that we have and all that we are. St. John Paul II, who's probably my favorite saint, he had something called the law of the gift. It says this: man cannot fully find himself except through a sincere gift of himself. So again, we're not just talking about money, we're talking about my life is a gift from God, and how am I giving back? Scripture says if you want to save your life, give it away. And ironically, that's how we find the greatest joy in life, is not making it about us, but by giving ourselves as a gift. I don't know if you remember when Cardinal George died, Archbishop Sarton, who was our bishop at one time, was giving the homily at his funeral. And he said, Cardinal George once said, that the only thing we can take with us to heaven is what we've given away here on earth. I love that. The only thing we can take with us to heaven is what we've given away here on earth. And the greatest of those is love. And you've experienced that, right? When you give love away freely, what happens? It comes back to us in ways that we never imagine. So this week, let us reflect on these three widows. The widow of Zarephath. Do I trust God enough to offer him everything? The widow in the gospel. How do I express my trust and gratitude with God with my time, talent, and treasure? And the Blessed Mother. Am I willing to give sacrificially, trusting that God's plan is greater than mine? I had the opportunity this week to celebrate my friend, now Bishop Dennis Spees. He's the auxiliary bishop of our diocese, his Episcopal ordination. And one of the things he's famous for saying is this. He says, we cannot outdo God in generosity, but I dare you to try.